She's so many things to me. Sarah Jakes Roberts. She is pastor. She is friend. She is business mogul, minister, conference hoster extraordinaire. I am just crazy about this chick, and she is here with me today, or I'm there with her. We're not sure which one, but hey, Sarah.
Hey, friend. How are you?
I am doing so good. And in the many, many interviews and podcasts and all the things we do, I was super looking forward to this one because it's a chance to talk to my
It's like,
friend.
first of all, I don't get to talk to you enough, even though we talk every day. I'm just like, anytime we get one-on-one and have some banter, that's a good time for me.
Agreed. Well, this is a special one-on-one time because you have transformed one of the things that I think you are most highly anointed for into a book. And the book is called Power Moves. And I say that you personify this because whenever you speak, whenever you share, whether you are being vulnerable about where you've walked or you are just preaching the gospel, you inspire fight in us. There's something that always hits me when I've heard you minister or pour out that leaves me feeling like I'm ready for the fight. And I feel like that is just poured into Power Moves. And so I'm so excited about this book and I want to tell people about it. I want you to tell people about it. So tell us about it. Why'd you write this one? Why'd you choose power as a topic?
I chose power as a topic because whenever I start, I guess for those who maybe don't know about my speaking or maybe don't know about me outside of speaking.
Who don't know? Okay.
Well,
I hope somebody that doesn't know is listening. So
the garden is large. The garden is very large. So I'm just glad to be in the number on today. But before I started speaking, even now, the reason why I evoke fighting in people is because I am very much so in a fight or flight moment when I am up there speaking. I am like, Lord, I'm nervous, I'm introverted, I'm anxious, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to say yes. And I'm fighting to overcome my fear and my doubt right there, live and in the moment. And then there's this moment where I'm like, I'm whooping fear, I'm whooping doubt. And then I'm like, you should whoop it. And then from there, things just get wild.
If people could hear the things that are running through our heads when we're preaching, I think people would be shocked if there was some internal recorder.
Like, absolutely. It'd be like, I mean, there are moments where I'm like, that didn't make any sense. You need to go on and wrap it up now. Did you see that woman's face? It didn't.
100%. I like that you said sometimes it's that fear fight because when we're experiencing the emotion of fear, which everybody knows is perfectly valid as humans, we have this response. We call it fight, flight, freeze. And depending on the time, the space, the thing, the person, it could be any of those. But sometimes our fear response is being manifested in fight. What's the difference between that fight and the fight that a power move supplies?
Okay. Oh, goodness. I will say that part of the reason why I wrote the book is because when I got finished speaking, people would tell me, you're such a powerhouse. You're such a powerhouse. I was so powerful. But I didn't really feel powerful. I didn't feel like a powerhouse. I just felt like I was being obedient to God. And there was a part of me initially that I was like, I wonder how I can be who that is on stage and like in all the other areas of my life. Like, I want that much intensity. I want that much force to show up in everything that I do. And I really heard God say that what you don't understand is you are just as powerful in the spaces when you're with your children, the spaces when you're in meetings, as you are in that moment. It's just that the power has a different expression. And so when we begin to make power moves, I think part of the reason why we don't make power moves is that we are afraid that in those moments, us showing up in the fullness of our identity, really owning our thoughts, really owning what we need from connection or what we can offer to an idea, we are afraid that if I do this, then in some way it will be rejected. It won't make sense. And so we end up allowing that fear to have more power than who we could be if we release that power. And so I started writing this book because I truly believed that what I was doing outside of those moments when I was preaching had everything to do with what was happening when I was up there, that I was exercising authenticity. I was trusting my voice. I was seeing how when I looked outside of the fear of, hey, you know, you're not a traditional pastor, you shouldn't be doing conferences, you shouldn't be preaching at all, maybe. When I started moving outside of that fear, it helped me to understand that really power starts within us, and then people are affected by who we become when we trust that power, and that's what makes us a force. But when we don't let power move in us, we don't trust that power can move outside of us. And so I think that this book is very confrontational, but like in a beautiful confrontational way about like, what is keeping you from moving in power? How did it get that much power? And then how do you reclaim that power and throw it in the direction of who God has called you to be? And that knowing within you that says like, hey, I could do something better, different, that is more authentically aligned with who I am.
Love that. All of those roles. And you've always been so open about how many roles we play in life, especially as women, and wanting to feel like we know what we're doing in every single one of those spaces, that we have power in some way. What is power? How do you define that?
So the ability to affect something strongly, that is the foundational definition that I have for power in the book. And I started off that wide because I think it's important that we understand that our fears can have power. Right. Shame has power. Our anxiety has power. It has enough power to stop us. It has enough power to keep us quiet. Systems have power. Patriarchy. There's a reason why we celebrated Women's History Month last month. It's because those systems had power, and one woman said, you don't get to have that power over me. And we celebrate the women who reclaim that power. So the ability to affect something strongly, whether that is positively or negatively. But as the book progresses, we start to talk about, but what does power mean to you? Like, what is your own definition of power? And what do you want to affect strongly? What has affected you strongly? And how do we move forward from here? And I am excited because I had to redefine what power meant for me. So I had to say, okay, wait, this shame affected me strongly. It had power. I'm taking the power back. I am who God says I am. I can do what God says I can do. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I have a right to still have a voice. I'm still worthy of love. I can still have confidence with these scars on my arms. And so I reclaim the power from shame. But then also the next question is like, how does that power show up in who I am as a wife, as a pastor, as a mother? What does power look like for me in those areas? And I had a lot of learning and unlearning to do, because I thought me being a powerful wife was making sure dinner was on the table at 6:00, making sure that my man was taken care of every single night. Don't say no. If he feel like it, you feel like it. Okay. And I thought that if I check all those boxes, I will feel powerful as a wife. Turns out I felt resentful. You know, as a mom, being there for the kids all the time, I ended up feeling like, okay, I'm trying to do all the things, but I wanted to really feel powerful and that I was taking up space and having connections that were valuable to me. And it may look different for everyone. So that's my long answer, because I do think power is always changing in its definition, but foundationally, it's the ability to affect something strongly.
Was not a long answer. It was a perfect answer, because you're clarifying something that surprised me. So like when you first told me the title of the book, Power Moves, I heard how to. This is what we do, because that's what the phrase means to us, right? She's making power moves. That means she's doing something that I can see. And a lot of times we define our power like that. This is what I did. I'm checking the boxes. I'm doing the things. And so I just heard you say, that was not it. It wasn't in what I was doing. It was somewhere else. And so this idea that power is, we're not making power moves, but that power itself moves. That was just revolutionary to me. Like, okay, let this thing flow. I'm thinking of where the Bible says we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the excellency of the power would be of God and not of us.
Yeah.
One of my favorite verses, because I feel like it gives me permission to feel all my feelings, to be earthen, to be fragile and strong at the same time, to be able to hold things, but also to sometimes be empty. And that the power that's flowing through is from God and not me when I'm doing the things he's called me to do. How do you reconcile that without it completely divorcing the power from me, but also recognizing how it flows through me? You know what I'm saying? How do you reconcile that?
I float with the flow. You know what I mean? What I loved, what I learned about those moments where people were like, oh my gosh, you're such a powerhouse, is that all that was happening in that moment is that I was abandoning second guessing and I was just completely surrendering to the moment. And that complete reliance on God made God and I one in those moments. And I just needed to figure out, how do God and I become one in the moment where I'm about to have a business deal and I got to fight for some rights that they may not be willing to give to me, but how do I do it in a way that maintains my integrity? That oneness is only possible to us when I think we do some of the work that you are an advocate for, even with the Garden Within. It's like, I have to know where I am positioned in the partnership. I have to know that this is something I want. I also have to know that this is something I'm willing to put myself on discount for. But because I'm partnering with God, I have a different set of boundaries, a different perspective, that I don't have to be desperate for anything, that at the end of the day, what's for me will be for me. All I have to say is where my boundaries are and see what happens from that place. So the goal then is, if I am going to be powerful in every area of my life, then I have to align myself consistently with power. That's mindfulness. That is breaking up with my past and no longer being tormented by the shame of who I was. It's removing the filter of some of our family dynamics and systems and saying that I only want to see what God sees in this moment. I only want to say what God says in this moment. And that takes a lot of stillness, because our worlds are moving at such a rapid pace that it's very easy to just get an autopilot and start doing what comes natural or doing what we've always done. But the beauty of being present allows you to discover where power is in this moment. And I feel it when it happens. Even now, I feel it. Oh my gosh, we feel it at Woman Evolve. Me and you will take a look at each other and we're in it. We're in it. The logistics are out of the way. People's nerves have calmed down and we are in the flow. But it requires everyone being present, releasing expectations, and just like looking for where God is showing up.
I love that stillness and being still. Like, that is where it does show up. We have the power to prepare, but then I think there's this moment when you know you're over preparing and it's like, stop, but we do have the power to prepare. We have the power to show up. We have the power to say yes, which I think is probably our greatest power, just saying yes to God and not having all the details. And then you're right, there's always this moment where you're just like, and that's the thing. I think for me, like, I've started tentatively, I hate to say things like this because I'm always like, I don't need God to test me on this, but I'm tentatively have started to look forward to the moments when I notice that I'm feeling powerless. Yeah. Because that means look to the left, look to the right. Somewhere the power is moving. And it's about the flow in from a different space. This is that moment. And learning to, in that stillness, say, I'm feeling powerless. And then also say, that means it's coming from somewhere. It's just shifting. It's not gone. But something had to flow out for something else to flow in. And that tentative moment.
That's why I started the book like talking about what it means to feel powerless. Because once again, it's like, if you got a room full of women and men, hey fellas, I'm going to say women, but y'all can keep listening.
They listen.
If we got a room full of women and we ask the women, how many of you want to be powerful? Some women would raise their hands, but a lot of women would be like, can I do it and not be stressed? Because otherwise I would rather be whatever this is. But if we begin to ask them instead, how many of you feel powerless? in whatever area, whether it's in your workplace, whether it's in ministry, whether it's in relationships, as a mother, as a child, how many of you have ever experienced powerlessness? When you ask that question, it hits everyone in the room because we all know what it's like to feel powerless. I just think we have become so comfortable with feeling powerless that we don't interrogate what happened to my power. Like even if you can't even describe what it is, you know what powerless is, but what happened to me where I have become a shell of a version of myself? And when we discover the residue of whatever made us feel powerless, the conversations, and sometimes the roles that we played in giving those things value and power, we have an opportunity to then reclaim. In the book, I actually call it to reopen the flow, because those are the areas where power was clamped down. Like it was flowing in your direction, but then this happened. And I use the example of a water hose, like you fold a water hose in half on those hot summer days when you don't want to turn it off from the wall. You're like, I'll just clamp it and that'll keep the water from flowing. That's what happens to our power. Sometimes we clamp it with our own thoughts. Sometimes someone else comes along and they step on it and no power is no longer flowing to us. But when we recognize that I once felt something differently than I feel now, even if it was years ago, then maybe we can get you back to a place where we can get you flowing again with beliefs and thoughts and faith that power was never meant to stop flowing in your direction. It was just clamped down.
So now, my mind is like, soup, 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 because water, gardens, here we be. And what is flowing through the soil. And that there's two sources of power. The seed has the power in it to produce something. The soil has power to open the seed. And so it's not all on us. I'm thinking of when you said I used to feel powerful, like these seeds used to grow here. I am enough used to grow here. God's got this used to grow here. And then it seems like it's not growing there. When that happens, it may not be the seed that's the issue, but is the soil in a different condition than it used to be? Is sadness, is anger, is fear changing the texture of this ground? And if so, I need to let some things flow so that we can wake the seed back up.
Come on, gardens.
Yeah, seriously. Let's talk about surrender. Because how is surrender our theme for the year when you are releasing a book called Power Moves? It doesn't sound like congruent topics. How are surrender and power intersecting for you right now?
Because sometimes in order for us to move with power, we have to surrender what we thought power would look like. We have to surrender what we thought our lives would look like. We have to embrace the reality of what is. And that is hard. If anything, I think that is probably one of the top 3 things that keeps us from feeling powerful, is thinking that power was supposed to look like this. I was supposed to be a mother by now. I was supposed to have started the business. I should have multiple employees. I should be ready to retire by now. Like, this is what I thought power would look like. And it doesn't look like that. So I don't have any power at all. And in order to discover where power is, you have to surrender where power was. And changing your life in that way it's devastating. It is devastating. It's devastating. It is destructive. And to think, like, it's one thing for your life to just be devastated, but I do think there's something about holding on to it that, like, I can imagine if a house was being demolished and you were just in there holding up that one wall because you're like, Jesus, please, just if I could keep this one wall together. But there comes a time when you have to step back and you have to say everything around it has turned to rubble. This wall isn't doing anything anymore. So I have to surrender to the reality that a demolition is necessary, and I'm going to have to partner with the rubble to rebuild.
Okay, so stop right there. We're going to partner with the rubble to rebuild. This goes straight to, one, why I love you so much, what you are being in my life. So you have been so gracious over this last few years to be sharing about how you feel like I've impacted your life, the ways that you have tapped into your emotions, gone to therapy, done all the things. And that has always meant so much to me. But I'm going to take this moment to say how you have been so critical to my life. And in the last 2 years, my life has changed drastically. I am living in a different state. I published a book that God is blessed to do incredibly well and has blown my mind, but even pleasurable, I don't want to say positive, but even change that feels good is hard because it tears down something else. But also, as you know, I've walked through something really, really difficult. My marriage ended in 2023, and that was a huge shift. And it did feel like everything was falling apart. Everything was falling down. And you and the way that you have allowed power to flow in your life, the way you have stood in rubble and rebuilt, the way that you have written a new story after surrendering the old story of your life has meant everything to me. As I'm standing in some rubble and rebuilding and writing the story that God has for me and surrendering the story that I was committed to, the story of my life that I didn't expect to change, the plot twist that I didn't see coming and didn't want to come. It has been everything to me for you to teach me how to let power flow when my identity is shifting. So I want to thank you for that and ask you to tell people a little bit more about the lessons you've taught me about standing in rubble, rewriting a story, and allowing ourselves to have the power to do that.
First of all, I love you. It was my pleasure. After all the therapying you've done for me to be able to be like,
listen.
Because if you're going to stand in rubble, you need someone who can cuss and pray. And for me to be able to be like,
listen, y'all,
girl,
telling the truth. Just telling the truth.
It's hard. And I know how hard it is. Yeah. Even in my situation, when I went through my divorce, it was necessary, but it didn't make it any less hard, right, even though it was necessary. And I think some of the things that I just wanted to share with you as you were walking through this very delicate season of life change and transition is that, like, it can be whatever it is that you feel even in this moment. Yep. And sometimes you will be happy, sometimes you'll be angry, and like all of those are going to be valid. And also trusting that at the end of the day, because I am, as someone who's been divorced and a little bit further down this path, that you really do find yourself again. Like you really do discover a way to live again that isn't just like second prize, that still can feel like first place. And I think a lot of times when we experience rubble, we're like, we'll rebuild, but I won't make anything that grand. I won't make anything. I only live in tents.
Ooh,
I only live in tents.
Come on. Right. Because when the things that you thought were permanent turn out not to be, the choice to want to build things that are collapsible, temporary, quick to move, like a tent. Woo! Yeah, that's big. Yeah. You hit me right there. That is so true. Yeah. Like what's stable? Because we're desperate for stability. As human beings, we're desperate for stability. And then what can I not count on? And how do I build a permanent structure to allow me to feel like everything's temporary?
And that's I think one of the things I told you at one point is like, basically, this isn't what I said, but since we have this analogy, like you're going to have a lot of tents and then you're going to find the house of your dreams. Yeah.
That's very true.
You know, like you're going to have a lot of tents. And when you get finished, you're going to be like, wait a minute, I survived. And that storm is not coming again. And because that storm is not coming again, I can rebuild. My husband and I went on vacation to Turks and Caicos, and we had such a good time. And I looked to see because the hotel was I just wondered, because the islands are often hit with devastation from hurricanes. And I was looking at this place and it's like gorgeous, but I'm thinking like, how do you build something knowing a hurricane is coming? But you build it with the knowledge that storms can come, but also the storm isn't here. And I don't want to start building my life for a storm that may or may not come. I want to enjoy where I am in the present. And so I will make it in some way. From each storm, I'll learn how to become a little bit more storm proof for the next time, but I'm still going to live like the storm isn't coming, because that's the only way that I can experience the restoration.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I start living according to the